Hi, welcome to our channel True Up. A phenomena occurs when a nation possesses significant strength but is not the world's most powerful nation. The Old World Congress gathers a coalition of subservient nations to besiege you. China and the United States have traditionally been the main competitors in the global game. Since China has the largest potential and the strongest growth momentum, it has been widely accepted among American elites that China is the biggest threat. As planned, the recent NATO summit turned into a gathering of the US-led vassal states attacking China and Russia. Russia was cited as NATO's greatest and urgent threat in its so-called Strategic Idea publication, NATO 2022 Strategic Concept. For the first time, China was included in the paper, which would reportedly establish the organization's goals, primary duties, and precise procedures for the ensuing 10 years. It is revised about every 10 years, with the most recent revision being made public in 2010 during the Lisbon summit. In order to protect the security interests of the alliance, the group is open to constructive engagement with China, especially developing reciprocal transparency, the paper added. Additionally, the day before, NATO Secretary General Stoltenberg made a public statement to the effect that Beijing should not be viewed as an enemy and that NATO should cooperate with it on topics like climate change. They deliberately attacked and defamed China while promoting interaction with it in the sphere of collaboration, all the while harboring a Cold War mindset and ideological bias. This self-defeating reasoning is identical to the competition, collaboration, conflict trio put forward by U.S. Secretary of State Blinken last year. As a result, this strategic idea, paper, which appears to be the crystallization of communal wisdom, is essentially an expression of American policy. Since the Biden administration took office, the United States has repeatedly used the tactic of pulling hills and forming small circles against China in an effort to gain an advantage in power status and compel China to make concessions in crucial areas in order to preserve American hegemony in the world. I'm afraid the goal of this NATO meeting, which includes shouting at and discussing China, is also the same. The issue, however, is that every action the United States takes that it claims to be multilateralism is really just unilateralism that prioritizes the interests of the United States over those of its allies and partners, places them at the forefront of major power conflict, and benefits the United States. Who would be prepared to be a moth to the flames for American dominion given that every nation has only a limited amount of time to live? In the past, the United States' two summits with ASEAN and American nations in its own country were both met with hostility. Collectively, ASEAN nations indicated reluctance to choose a side between China and the United States. The leaders of the ASEAN nations, as represented by Singaporean Prime Minister Lee Hsien Loong, have repeatedly stated that the United States must accept the fact that China has emerged as a global power and that a conflict between the two would not only be detrimental to the interests of the two parties involved, but also put the safety of the entire world in jeopardy. Even though many national leaders were not there, the Summit of the Americas was boycotted. Even the United States received criticism from President Ortega of Nicaragua for convening the gathering. Imperial appeal for countries in the backyard to come and provide commands, the statement said. Biden declared that the G7 will generate $600 billion over the course of 5 years to finance the building of infrastructure in underdeveloped nations as a countermeasure to China's One Belt, One Road plan. The G7 conference just ended. As soon as the information was made public, it sparked vehement protest from individuals all around the world. Why does the G7 proposal replace China's funding rather than supplement it? Some online commenters questioned. The United States and the United Kingdom attempted to encourage the use of harsher language against China during this NATO summit, but old European nations like France and Germany expressed disapproval, and even Lithuania, and Estonia did not participate. In this sense, Concerns have also been expressed about nations that have aided the US in its conflict with China by walking through fire and water. Since China and NATO do not share a border directly, how can this situation possibly pose a threat or challenge? Not to add that hundreds of people crowded Madrid streets outside the site to demonstrate against the perversions of the United States and its allies while waving banners that said, "No NATO, no war, for peace." It is clear that the United States is using the phrases assistance, cooperation, shared values, and rules-based international order as a kind of deception. In reality, it calls on the target nation to pick a side between China and the United States and even sacrifice its own interests in order to further American objectives. In actuality, the China danger was created by American politicians to further their own political objectives and does not really exist. Sher Wen, a senior fellow at the Carnegie Endowment for International Peace and a U.S. expert on Asia and China security issues, stated in an article that one of the main causes of the current issues with the U.S. strategy toward China is that the country has greatly exaggerated the China threat in its assessment of China. Out of the fundamental, factual statement that threatening inflation, it should be noted that this judgment perfectly captures the crux of the Sino-US ties dilemma. The past U.S. administration fostered the idea of a China danger in the minds of the American population by using publicity and propaganda in order to get rid of internal and foreign challenges. But the misinformed public sentiment ultimately worked against the U.S. administration, making anti-China sentiment politically acceptable. Appeasement will be used to describe relations. The paranoid mindset of both pro- and anti-China has now put the United States in a precarious strategic position. The U.S. administration should cease leveraging ideological differences to incite conflict, give up its Cold War mindset and zero-sum game thinking, and get back on track. The U.S. government's ability to spit out the lethal anti-China cocktail it made and swallowed will rely on its resolve and fortitude. China cannot back down and do nothing in the face of such a crisis, nor can it get impatient and lose its strategic commitment. For some errors, we must not only demonstrate our resolve but also communicate the truth to the public. Thanks for watching our video. We would appreciate it if you subscribed our channel and gave us a thumb. See you.